Daytona 500 pole qualifying is sponsored by AT&T. Rethink possible. Our live coverage continuing, and glad you're watching NASCAR on Fox, and our aerial coverage provided by Goodyear. Everything we learn making tires that face the grueling demands of NASCAR inspires what we roll into your car. Goodyear, the official tire of NASCAR.
Danica Patrick on the pole so far. 5 fast Chevrolets lead the 3 Joe Gibbs Toyotas and Joey Logano's 4 Dale Jr.'s Chevrolet. That's your top 10 right now. As the detail Dr. Ford for Front Row Motorsports comes out, David Reagan of Unadilla, Georgia, working on his 7th Daytona 500 start. Here's a look at your top 10.
And Darrell and I were talking a lot of Hendrick engines, but then you also see all 3 of the Joe Gibbs drivers there in the top 10.
You got 6 Hendrick engines in the top 10, and you have 3 Gibbs Toyotas in the top 10, and 1 lone Ford there at Logano.
Brian Keselowski, that's Brad Keselowski's older brother, 31 years old, from Michigan, has brought a car down here to try to make the Daytona 500. They rolled it out for qualifying. It would not start. So NASCAR puts that car on a 5-minute clock. That's how long they have to get the car running and across the line to begin its qualifying lap. Otherwise, he'll be recorded as no time and start last in his Budweiser dual race on Thursday.
David Reagan completing lap 1. David's lone Sprint Cup Series win came here back in July of 2011. We talked about Paul Menard getting married. David Reagan married longtime girlfriend Jacqueline Butler during the offseason.
Remember, Reagan nearly won the 2011 Daytona 500, but changed lanes on a restart against the rules, was black flagged, all but within sight.
And Trevor Bayne was ready to push him to victory. Trevor wasn't even thinking about pulling out and trying to win the race. He was just going to push Reagan to the finish. They black flag him, and all of a sudden Trevor's leading the race. Says, oh man, look at this.
Quickest Ford right now is Joey Logano's Shell Pennzoil Ford from Penske Racing, fastest at 45.97. Here's Reagan, 46.24. He and teammate David Gilliland time in within 100th of a second of each other. Let's revisit our Fox Ghost car with the fastest 2 qualifiers right now. Danica Patrick in green and Jeff Gordon's number 24 Chevrolet.
One thing I like about this, Danica runs the same line every time. I really like that.
Well, let's see what happens down the back straightaway, but what seems to be consistent, she's always lower, whether it's versus Tony Stewart, Ryan Newman, now Jeff Gordon.
But everybody beat her into turn 1. Everybody, even Stewart had a car length, you see here. But I don't know, Jeff said maybe a puff of wind, or maybe she didn't get the same wind as he got. And you can see she's pulling away a little bit here in 3.
But Darrell, probably don't you think the reason everyone kind of beat her into turn 1 is because she maybe pinched it off just a little bit by being lower entering turn 1?
Could very well be, Larry, but you saw everybody beat her into 1, and she beats everybody into 3 and 4.
And there's the difference, 3/100ths of a second at the start-finish line. Trevor Bayne driving the Wood Brothers number 21, the Motorcraft Ford. Ever since Glenn Wood first strapped into a NASCAR racer more than 60 years ago, the Wood Brothers have been a Ford team.
That car it's a paint job, as Trevor mentioned, of the Hall of Fame car sitting over in the fan zone over there, the 63.5 Ford. Leonard, Eddie, Glenn, all of them, they worked so hard to build that car over there for the Hall of Fame. And of course, the drivers that have driven this 21 car, Larry, it's a who's who of auto racing, not just in stock cars, but Indy cars, A.J. Foyt, Dan Gurney, so many people.
5 Daytona 500 wins, and there's Leonard Wood on the left. Tiny Lund, Cale Yarborough, A.J. Foyt, David Pearson, and Trevor Bayne won the 500 for Glenn and Leonard Wood.
And this will be the 55th running of the Daytona 500. Should they get in this 500, and we anticipate they certainly will, it will be the Wood Brothers' 52nd start in the Great American Race.
That's Leonard we see there. Just think about it. David Pearson got inducted to the Hall of Fame. Glenn Wood got in the last year, and Leonard Wood this year. And this baby is on a run.
Ooh. just as we did that, he lost a bit of speed there on the back straightaway.
Well, we felt like this would be one of the bullets that Danica Patrick will have to dodge. And of course, there's another Hendrick engine to go, Juan Pablo Montoya, not to mention Kevin Harvick, who's shown a lot of speed so far. And it's going back to the left now as he comes toward the start-finish line.
Very nice run. Super run.
Third for Trevor Bayne inside row 2. He is by far the fastest Ford at 45.92, 195.9 miles an hour.
I bet Leonard Wood's been working on that fuel injection somehow and got that thing super tuned up.
Well, I understand he still does a bit of work on the drive lines.
Oh,
nobody's better at cheating mechanical
good
drag.
job, guys. Just missed the front row. That's a really good job, though, this thing.
Great run for Trevor Bayne, and briefly you saw Brian Keselowski's car. They're still trying to push start it as that 5-minute clock runs down on Keselowski's hopes of making the Daytona 500.
Carl Edwards over here. It's
trying to lend a little hand there.
You see this gentleman right over here. That's Bob Keselowski. That's Brian and Brad's dad, who's actually serving as the crew chief for Brian Keselowski on this car.
I think Carl's probably saying, you know, maybe there's some things to reset the ECU unit. Did you hit the button on it? You know, whatever. I think he's just trying to help Brian here get this thing fired up.
And the hourglass ran out. Brian Keselowski does not go home, but he'll start at the back of his Budweiser dual race Thursday. Kevin Harvick, whom we last saw last night in Victory Lane for the Sprint Unlimited. Put son Keelan in the car for a bit of good luck. Keelan learned to crawl this weekend. Dad learned the way to Victory Lane. Watch this block on Greg Biffle. Take that. There wasn't an inch between them. They touched, and Harvick held them off.
Yeah, while everybody else was running the marathon this morning, he was finishing his up about the time they took off.
Yes, he was.
His little celebration. I texted him last night, congratulating him, said, and the celebration begins.
The Budweiser Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing. It's already known this will be his final season with that team, and he sure started it off with a bang.
I love what he said on the radio. He said, well, there's one for the lame duck group.
Harvick did not show a lot of speed in practice yesterday.
No, they've actually struggled with the car. He complained about no corner speed. The car really seemed to be dropping off in the turns quite a bit. They made an adjustment on that car yesterday one time and seemed like it picked up, but they never could back that speed up.
Well, Darrell, I have to believe that this car here, it's pretty much what teams will do. This will be a better race car than even what he had last night. I'll bet you this race car races good.
I bet you that race car driver will race good.
Yes, he will. See a little bit of water, a little bit of steam there at the base of the windshield on the right side, getting a little bit warm with all the tape on the nose.
Well, that's, you know, they've probably done everything they can to try to get as much speed out of this car as they can. 23rd
for Kevin Harvick. Now, we mistakenly thought the time had run out on Brian Keselowski, but here's Steve.
Well, you guys saw part of the story. Carl Edwards was walking over to us to do an interview, and he saw the 52 team frantically trying to get that car started. He ran over and he told some of the guys on his team, hey, come on, let's help this guy get going. You know, Carl knows what it's like to have lean times, but long story short, Carl went back with them, and he helped them get this car pushed and fired. So nice job by Carl Edwards to help an underfunded team.
Absolutely. Carl knows what it's like. 10 years ago, he told me the other evening, he was living in an apartment, driving a car with no heater, working a full-time job, racing on weekends. But
yeah, something is still not right for Brian Keselowski. Doesn't sound right. It's not even close to up to speed.
Keselowski was slowest in practice yesterday. Single car, lightly funded operation, family operation. Trying to live the dream here.
You know, I was reading just this morning that Brian graduated from Rochester High School in 1999 in Rochester, Michigan, but the way he did it, because he wanted to work during the day on the family race team, he did it by taking night classes.
All right, Keselowski on track. Let's check with Matt.
Mike. About 50 yards away is a replica that Leonard Wood beautifully created for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And the current model, very fast. What means most to you about putting this car just outside the front row?
Man, qualifying is what showcases all the hard work for the offseason. I mean, when you look there and you see the top guys, that shows who worked the hardest and the smartest, I guess, throughout the whole offseason. And I know that these guys know how to build a super speedway car. We'd love to be on the front row because that's really all that matters today. But, you know, it does show how hard they've worked, and that's their payoff. In the race, you know, you get in the draft and all the aero of the car, it's not as important. I mean, it's important for sure once you get out to the front, but anybody can kind of push up to the front or do whatever. But this pays off for them.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you.
How big it was for Ford Motor.
You know, young drivers, when you think back to Trevor down here 2 years ago when he won the race, Jeff Gordon really gave Trevor Bayne a lot of confidence. He went to Trevor Bayne and said, you've got a fast car and you really know what you're doing with it. That confirmation from another driver, from a veteran driver like Jeff Gordon, it can make all the difference in the world in a guy trying to get his career going, get a name for himself. And that was huge.
And on Thursday, Gordon backed it up by drafting with Trevor Bayne. A lot of people wouldn't run with a rookie, but he did. Here is Brian Keselowski, the truckerfan.com Toyota. Coming to the line, he will post a lap of 48.94 to get him a position in the Budweiser duel on Thursday that will set the field for the 500. Steve?
With Juan Pablo Montoya, and got a good start last night until you sustained some damage. How fast is this Chevrolet right now?
I think it's pretty good. You know, our target Chevy seemed pretty good yesterday. You know, we had to do an engine change. In the second practice, you know, the engine let go. So I don't know. We'll see. I think this motor is probably as good as the one we had, or very close. So it should be pretty good. You know, we felt we were pretty good in practice. So we'll see.
Thanks, Juan.
No worries.
Now, he mentioned changing engines. The way the engine rule works here, he will have to go to the rear of the field to start the Budweiser duel on Thursday. He can start the 500 wherever he finishes in that Budweiser duel.
I think he's going to be pretty good, Larry, because when he was out there when the engine blew in that thing, he was on a pretty fast lap.
Yes, he was. It was going to be a great second lap. That's when it blew up.
I wouldn't count him out.
Kurt Busch from Las Vegas, Nevada. Sprint Cup Series champion and a three-time runner-up in the Daytona 500, twice for Roush Fenway Racing, and then in 2008 for Penske Racing.
Pushed his teammate to victory that day.
Right, Ryan Newman.
Yeah, and it was a big day for Roger Penske. He won the Daytona 500, but no day bigger for Roger Penske than this last year.
1 year ago, Kurt Busch drove for James Finch. Furniture Row Racing, based out of Denver, Colorado, decided to make a change and put Kurt Busch behind the wheel of their Chevrolet late last season. Team owner Barney Visser convinced by his whole team and management that if we can get this guy, we can win races. And Busch has had a troubled time off the track. He's a bit mercurial with his temper, but he's a wheelman.
Yeah, and they were pretty solid those last 4 or 5 races of 2012. And I think back to his speed weeks 2 years ago driving for Penske. He won the Sprint Unlimited. He won the Budweiser Duel. Led a lot of laps in the Daytona 500. Ended up finishing 5th. So a great speed weeks for Kurt a couple of years ago.
And Regan didn't end up in too bad a shape. I mean, he's going to drive for Dale Jr. this year in the Nationwide Series. They won the last race at Homestead last year. So, you know, maybe it worked out best for everybody.
Yeah, and he'll run a limited schedule just as he's going to be doing here in the Daytona 500, driving that 51 car for James Finch.
37th on lap 1, and this car not gaining speed versus the field as Busch comes around to complete his second timed lap right down by the yellow line. Good line. The car just doesn't have quite as much speed as he would like. Kurt will pick up from 37th to 30th, 46.47. 193.6. 3 drivers to go in Daytona 500 pole position qualifying.
I took my love, took it down. I climbed a mountain and I turned around. Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I've built my life around you. time.